creek bed. Do I need to have a lot of water area for that, or will it grow in my yard?
Now, mimosa will grow just about anywhere. It's kind of like a weed,
Yeah,
but they
weed
are a
tree,
pretty
yeah.
tree.
I think it's pretty.
Hummingbirds like them. But remember, they're very.
That's what I'm after, is hummingbirds.
Yeah, they will spread very easily.
Roots
So
will take over.
yeah, make sure it's a
Will
place
they?
that they can spread out.
And they get big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they get big?
Yes.
Is that what they're along highways a lot in this area?
Yes.
You in Tennessee, but I've noticed on most trees, but I'm like, no one planted that. I don't think. It's
No.
like really wild areas where I wouldn't expect one to have planted a mimosa tree, so.
They're spread by the wind, they're spread by birds and just kind
Well, I can't get one to survive for nothing.
yeah. Yeah, if you want it to grow, it won't.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
Okay. Okay, I had to switch to recording on this.
Okay, are we good? Good. Do we get through this one?
No.
Oh, soil test. Make sure you do a soil test to determine the acidity or alkalinity of the soil as well as essential nutrients. If you're not sure on how to do it, get with Carla or myself to learn how to do a soil test. You don't want to plant something and then it just die. Different plants have different pH levels that are needed for them. Blueberries are more acidic. Rhododendrons are more acidic. Trees are not as acidic, different types of trees. And it depends on one type of tree or type of bush. But your soil test should be done during the development of new area of landscape beds. So as you're planting the area and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to put a tree here, and you're certain that's what you're going to do, make sure you get a little soil and get a soil test. I've got a soil tester just for around my yard. This is not a cheap thing. I bought it because people were always like, well, what's wrong with my tree? The first thing I look at when they tell me something's wrong with the tree, I'm like, have you had your soil tested? Well, no. So I jam this sucker into the ground and it tells me right there what the pH level is in about 4 minutes. Of course, make sure you know what kind of tree you're dealing with and then what kind of pH is required from that tree. And like I said, and you'll be surprised, 10 foot of difference will make a big difference in pH. This woman had 2 dogwoods that she was talking about, and they were dying. And I said, well, let's look and see what's wrong with the soil first. Looked at the first dogwood, it was absolutely fine. You know, it wasn't as stressed as the one over here, 10 foot away from it, which had a very high pH. It was very alkaline. And, you know, it was extremely stressed. So we did do a little, add a little lime to that, and she's working with that. Does the tree look better when I went and looked at it a couple months ago? Yeah, but it's going to take some time because you're working with plants, and, you know, trees are plants. They're not just trees. But if you do have problems with whatever it is that you have with a tree or whatever, soil first. Soil is the most important thing that you can actually take care of. I can't remember where I got this at.
They sell it on Amazon.
Yeah, I think they sell it on Amazon. This is a Kelway soil tester. It'll run you about 120 bucks, but it's worth its weight in gold. You just got to remember to buy the little papers that go around it to take the static and the acidity off before you do it, and pop it into the ground. That kind of cleans it off, and that way when you get into the ground, it gives you the correct soil, correct pH. Like I said, it's a wonderful instrument. I use it all the time. I went for years and didn't have it, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I bought it and I love it. Everybody else loves it too at work and tries to steal it from me. So it hides in my truck on a lock and key and in my to-go bag. That's one of the things I actually have, and I check first is the soil. Oh, don't over fertilize. Fertilizer not expected to overcome problems caused by improper planting techniques, poor soil drainage, soil compaction, or incorrect watering practices. Make sure you do a soil test to figure out if you have the right pH. Also, if you do the right soil test, you will know what kind of fertilizer you need. Don't do like my dad and think that more is better. I could never, even when I was a kid, get him understand, like, Dad, if this bag says that this is how much fertilizer that you need to put per square foot, you don't need to add extra. It's not going to make the plant any bigger. You're not going to get any better yield whatsoever. You're actually hurting yourself rather than helping yourself. Now that he's 80 years old, he gets it. Yeah, because he's made a couple of boo-boos as he's gotten older. He realizes it's not what he thought it is. Read the label. Make sure to go by the label. Like I said, more is not better. You're not going to get a better yield. You're not going to get a bigger tree. It's not going to grow any faster. Quite opposite. You're probably going to kill your tree. You're probably going to kill your bush, or all of the excess is going to run off into a storm drain, and you're going to pollute the river or a creek or whatever. Too much fertilizer is bad. Don't do it. Use what the label actually says to use. I can't stress that enough. It happens a lot. Good lawn maintenance program may eliminate the need for supplemental fertilization of trees and other woody plants in the lawn. General tree vigor is determined by comparing the length of twig growth for the past 3 to 4 years. If you look at your trees and you don't see any additional twig growth on the very end of your trees, the past couple of years, then you've got a problem. It may not be the soil, it may not be the fertilizer, but you got something going on with the tree, because that tree should actually be growing. If it's not growing, something's wrong. Young trees should have at least 9 to 12 inches of terminal growth on the end per year, and mature trees actually have an average of 6 to 9 inches of growth. Remember, if you use your granular fertilizer, the ideal months to fertilize are February through July. Do not put any more fertilizer on any other time of year other than February and July, because you're just setting your woody ornamentals or your tree up for failure. They only will take so much, and they don't need any more. Your tree fertilizer recommendations in the winter are very spring with 10-10-10 at the rate of 18 pounds per 1,000 square feet when the ground cover is dry. Make sure to start the application 3 feet out from the trunk to 5 feet beyond the end of the branches and water end. Remember, a 1 pound coffee can actually holds about 2 pounds of fertilizer. I had a gentleman the other day, I went to his house, and he says, I'll put some fertilizer in the trees. I told him, I said, well, your trees look bad. I was like, well, how much did you use? Well, I used a coffee can, I put it around each tree. I was like, well, show me what you did. Oh, he loaded that coffee can up, and he poured it around the base of the trunk. I was like, well, that's what you did. I said, that's the first step you do wrong. He said, I fertilized it. I said, yeah, but I said, you fertilized the trunk of your tree. I said, your feeder roots are 3 feet out this way. I said, so this isn't going anywhere. I said, you want to make a little circle around the edge of the tree? I said, well, the soil would be absorbed by the feeder roots. He's like, well, nobody ever told me that. He didn't know. But I mean, I said, well, we talked about it for about an hour. He learned and he got it. And he found out that more is not better, to make sure that you read the label. And he did have the 10-10-10, which was good. He did read up on that. But he went above and beyond, because he thought, well, he was going to make this tree grow fast. And that's not the way it worked. You got fertilization of established plants. And the most practical way to fertilize large trees is to broadcast granular fertilizer on the surface of soil, allow the rain to actually transport the nutrients to the roots. When using the method, make sure you do application in the late fall, winter, or early spring, just before new growth begins. And broadcast the fertilizer on the area between the tree, beginning at the midpoint of the tree and the drip line, and approximately 6 to 8 feet beyond, varying with the height of the tree. Keep in mind, if you fertilize your grass, you normally don't have to do this. I have seen trees that have been over-fertilized and people have killed them. This one particular gentleman, he had 2 huge oaks in the yard. He had contracted out a lawn service, a local lawn service, to come and start fixing his grass. He wanted that beautiful, lush grass with no weeds in it, which I don't know what that is, but I mow weeds, I like weeds. But he actually wanted grass, and he didn't take into account as he was fertilizing trees, that the grass was getting fertilized too, so he was double fertilizing, and he ended up killing both his oak trees. Got to think out of the box once again. So if you're getting your grass fertilized, your trees getting fertilized too. And I had a lot of people that didn't think about that. Fertilization, newly planted ornamentals. Yeah, this is a big debate. Do you or don't you? Most of the growth the plant puts on its first year is spurred on by carbohydrates, minerals already stored in the plant. And this underscores the importance of buying a healthy plant from a reputable nursery. However, applying fertilizer at planting will help ensure that the plant stores sufficient nutrients for the following year. Some people do. I know orchard people will do fertilizing for orchards. When they put the orchard trees in, they'll also severely prune them back. That's a different type of tree, and I get it. And not every tree is the same. I personally don't put any type of fertilizer on my trees for the first year, sometimes 2 years. I let them get established. Like I said, and I will, going back to the fertilome that I use for the root system, I will apply a little weak fertilome that I get at Rural King, just to get those feeder roots established. But I will not fertilize to make that tree come out leafy green for the first 2 years. I'm thinking that tree doesn't need any more stressors added to it. And most of mine are not planted are native trees anyhow. And I just rely on the big man upstairs to help me out, and the nearby trees, and they're putting fertilizer on the grass all around the trees and all the parks and areas, and I plant the trees anyhow. So I'm kind of let it do itself. I don't add any more else. Like I said, that's a big debate. And if you do apply granular fertilizers at planting, the fertilizer should not come in contact with the roots of the plants. Make sure you broadcast the fertilizer on the soil surface according to the manufacturer's recommendations. Don't, when you plant the tree, go, let me put some fertilizer in the hole and then put the dirt over it. That's not a good practice. Actually sets your tree up for failure. You can also use a liquid fertilizer. Used as a drench at planting, they'll readily leach and won't provide a long-term benefit. But yeah, don't add the fertilizer and then put the soil in. That does not work. Bad practice. Sets your tree up for failure. Make sure when you actually transplant your tree and you work on establishing them, remove any tags or labels once again. Water the newly planted trees at the root zone thoroughly at least once a week. I like to say twice a week. I've got a 5-gallon bucket, 2 5-gallon buckets. I will take 2 5-gallon buckets out, and I'll do it real slowly. I have taken and put holes in 5-gallon buckets and left them sitting next to my trees, little nail holes. And I've actually poured water in those 5-gallon buckets instead of pouring around the base of the trees, where it can readily, slowly absorb into the trees. I think it works. Now, if you don't like 5-gallon buckets in your landscape, you can paint them gray, you can paint them brown. I've done that. I've actually cut them down and where you can't really see them. I've tried that, where people wouldn't view them a lot, but I like to do 5-gallon buckets. I'm thinking if nobody likes my yard, I'm sorry, it's my yard. But I'm doing it the way I want to do it. But I do it in my yard. I won't do it for the city. Container grown plants may be susceptible to drought stress once they're transplanted to the landscape. Make sure to keep water on your tree. Everybody, like I said, they'll plant a tree, they'll forget it, walk away. It's on its own. Needs a little help. All urban trees need help. This is due to the well-drained container media in which the plants are grown in nurseries, probably rapid moisture loss. Oh yeah, if you're doing like I do and you bought 3 trees and you're waiting to plant them in the ground, make sure to monitor the media that's in them, because that stuff, for some reason, the moisture loss is incredible. I mean, I've got to do them every day or every other day. And I'm constantly watching them to make sure they don't lose a lot of moisture out of them. But that stuff, it's temporary. It's just there to hold the tree and the roots together in the pot. Those trees are supposed to be put in the ground as soon as possible. If you can't get a tree into the ground as soon as possible, dig you a ditch. I've done this. Take the tree out of the pot, put the tree sideways into the ditch about to this angle, and run some mulch over the top of it until you're able to get it in there. If you don't want to have to sit there and fool with it, make sure you keep it watered and everything. It's called healing in a tree. You can always dig it up later. You can always move the tree whatever time of year you want to, as long as you make sure that you water it really good and you've got your holes ready. I mean, if you're not ready to plant that tree and don't want to commit to having that tree in that pot and taking care of it like you're supposed to, you can heal those trees in. I've got some trees that we were supposed to plant on downtown Franklin Street. I think I've got 9 left, but we had them healed in when we brought them to us over at Liberty Park. Well, the floodwaters got up and they covered the trees. Of course, they're healed into the ground. They weren't going anywhere. Well, we had the beaver taste about 9 of them out of the 30 some odd that we had healed in. So they've got beaver bite marks in them. What did we do with them? We distributed them throughout the other parks because we couldn't just take beaver bit trees and put them downtown where everybody could see them. So we made sure we had them to all the different parks and areas. Due to aesthetic reasons, sometimes people don't want to see bite marks in trees. But we did save them. They didn't think they were going to make them. Some of them, we had a couple of them, the beavers just chewed in half. So they thought they were very tasty. They do it all over the parks. Get these little guys and they think they need to build dams and stuff with them. So we've lost a lot of trees in that park, but we've added a lot of trees in that park too. Sometimes many newly planted trees and shrubs show little shoot growth during the first year or two. Don't freak out. Your tree's not dying if you don't see new shoot growth. They're just working on roots. What you're not seeing is what's going on below you. As long as you kind of take your fingernail and go over there and kind of scratch the bark just a little bit, as long as you see a little bit of green, that tree's good. Just leave it alone. Don't mess with it. It's taking care of itself. It's developing a new root system. It's establishing itself. Wonderful tree water bag. These are the ones that we're talking about at the top. I like tree water bags. The green ones are great. We use them during cold weather, please. They'll hold about 5 gallons apiece, and they drain slowly over a number of hours to actually keep the water soaking deep into the soil rather than just reaching over and drenching or leaving a 5-gallon bucket with holes next to them. It is a little more aesthetically pleasing if you're actually doing it in a public area. I really like the bottom donut ones. I like those because you can actually put a little mulch over the top of those. A lot of people don't see them, just like a little red cap visible. The only problem with those is how are you going to take 5 gallons of water and fill them up? We ran into this problem. So we have a tank we put in the back of a 1-ton, and we've got a garden hose, and we do it on a gravity fed system. And you've got to stand there and you've got to fill every single one of them up. And it takes about 5 minutes to fill each one of them up. And when you're doing anywhere from, I'd say 10 to about 40 trees a day, you're going to spend all day long filling up tree bags. And you're going to do it roughly about 2-3 times a week. And that takes a lot of time away from doing something else that you like to do, especially us. Now, they have come something that they have come out with what they call a tree diaper. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. I went to a conference, Tennessee Urban Forestry conference, and the guy was there and he was demoing his tree diapers. I don't think you were there at that one or not. But they had an idea. They took a baby diaper and they took all the absorbent stuff that was out of the middle of it, and they made what they call a tree diaper. And this is what this is made out of. It basically looks like kind of at the bottom. You might have to Google it. But you can sit it around the base of the tree, and when it rains, it recharges itself and absorbs the water from the atmosphere and from the rain back into it, so you don't have to fool with it as much. It's a lot easier than running out there and having to fill up bags all the time. It's kind of costly when you look at it, but I think it's a good idea. Have I bought any yet? No, I've just seen them. I thought it was a great idea. They're very costly at this point, and I really can't afford it in my budget to go get one. So we've been doing the donuts and the bags for right now. Make sure when you do put these bags on, you just don't walk off and forget them. You will, like I said again, you'll have to fill them maybe once, twice, 3 times a week, depending on the amount of rainfall and the weather that you have. So make sure you monitor. Pruning. This is where I have a lot of people just kind of go. They really don't understand pruning, and it's not rocket science. It's easier than what you think. Why prune? Well, you're going to prune to maintain healthy, vigorous plants of desirable shape and size, maintain plant health by removing dead, damaged, or diseased plant tissue, and you want to improve the appearance of your plant. Want to maybe train it to a particular size or a particular shape. You can increases the density of the plant, which helps shape or train plants in a natural form, such as hedges or espaliers. You may want your yard for your hedges to look a certain way. You might want to keep them below the windows. I mean, you may want your hedge to look like an animal. It depends on the person. I mean, there's a lot of the interesting people out there who have interesting landscapes. That's why we're master gardeners. We want the unusual. We like plants for what they are. Espaliers. I have a gentleman, Carla knows him. Matter of fact, he called me, this man, I am driving down Riverside. Yes, you know, he is trying to run me off the road, you know, because I didn't answer his call yesterday. He wants me to come look at his property tomorrow. He grows espaliers. That was my first moment with espaliers. I had to go get a book from the library on how to prune espaliers. I'll be honest, I did not know how to do it, so I had to teach myself how to do it. Espaliers were done by, I think, the French, due to a lack of space around their houses, because their houses were so close together in the cities. So they trained them to actually go up the walls on wires. They produce still a lot of fruit, but you have to continually prune them for shape to keep them to the side of the walls to make them produce this fruit. So I had to actually go out and learn how to do this, because I've never done it. Took me a little bit. This particular person likes me to do it for him, which is not going to happen. When I see him tomorrow, I'm going to hand him the shears and tell him I've done it 2 to 3 times. You're going to have to do it yourself. So he's not going to be happy when I see him tomorrow. I told him that last time. I said, no, Carla's not coming out of it. So you're going to plant it. You're going to have to learn how to prune it. That's what I'm going to tell him.
Did you find them already styate, or did he start them from whatever?
You know, I didn't ask him, did you?
I think he just bought regular trees and set up the wiring, you know, to espalier.
Yeah, espalier. I've heard it say different things.
So I think he just started with regular apple trees.
I mean, they look good. He's got it. He knows what he's doing. He's got an awesome area that, I mean, he's done all kinds of things with his property. I told him, I said, you know, by the time I think he doesn't have any more room to add something, he'll add something. Either it's a feature or a waterfall feature, or another plant or a bush or a tree, or he's always adding something. He's a very interesting individual. He's 100% Irish. Very interesting man. So what do you want to prune? You want to remove branches that are misshapen, crowded, rub them together, drooping on the branches for support. You want to remove branches with narrow crotch angles or branches that are crossing over each other. And this pruning practice is considered preventative, eliminates problem before the plant damage actually occurs. You want to sometimes stimulate or increase flowering or fruiting. Many more flowering plants produce more flowering buds the following season if old flowers are removed when they lose their attractiveness, which is actually called deadheading. If you want to see very badly pruned trees, go to Strawberry Alley. I was there this morning. I can't fix broken. I can't fix messed up. I guess when they were planted, nobody went back and did anything to them. They're horrible looking. I can't do anything with them because they get Christmas lights wrapped on them every single year. And then somebody else prunes them. So, and another thing, don't put Christmas lights on the Christmas trees, on the trees. It's bad practice. They put Christmas lights on the ones on the top end of Franklin Street. Have you looked at those trees? I fussed at the street department the other day and I told them, I said, do not trim these trees. The ones on lower end of Franklin are gorgeous. They're beautiful. And then they had pruned and trimmed these trees and they look horrible. They make it where, anybody ever seen the Lorax trees? They got little puffs at the ends. That's what these trees look like. And I feel so sorry for these trees. And don't wrap these trees. I mean, they're baby trees and they've already got lights on. And when they pull the lights off, you can see the indentions of the wires in the trees. And then they're growing into the wiring. I mean, I don't advocate for, I mean, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, and I know people want it. But it's just, I think it's a bad practice for trees. These lights stay on all night long and it messes with their, you know, it's like leaving a light on for you all night long. How well do you sleep? You know, I feel like plants and trees are the same way. You know, how good is it for this tree? What does it do to this tree? What is the long range effects of this on this tree? And then somebody else prune them that doesn't understand how to prune these particular trees. These were hybrid trees. They were full. There was some sweet gum, but they don't produce the sticky fruit. I actually saw them in Nashville one day, and I thought they were gorgeous. It was one of the ballparks we went to. And of course, you know me, I'm saying, wow, look at this tree. You know, my husband's like, come on, people are trying to run this over. And I'm like, look at this tree. This is a really cool tree. You know, this is, I like the form, the way it looks. Yeah, that's me. I actually pruned them, or actually planted them for the way they looked and the form that they actually had. I thought they were a very aesthetically pleasing tree and they would fit very well into the downtown scheme. So we planted all of Franklin Street with these trees, and they're absolutely gorgeous, I think. But the ones next to the bars and the shops just aren't really good right now. They're stressed out because they got wrapped with lights and pretty long. I can only do so much. My hands are tied. I can tell you best practices. I can show you how to prune your tree. But if you're gonna, take it upon yourself to maim some trees, I can't do anything else. So, not being ugly, just somebody else messes with your trees is not gonna be a good moment. Why is that not coming up? There it goes. Does it hurt the tree when you prune it? Here we go. Trees have feelings, right? You think trees feel when you prune them? I think they do.
They cry sometimes.
Yeah, I have seen them cry. I pruned some downtown, and yeah, they did cry. I think they feel it. But I consider, I don't think of trees as it or plants as it. I consider them my relatives. So, they've got some of the same DNA that we have. So when you're pruning a tree, the first things I always teach people is to remove all the broken, dead, and diseased limbs. I like to prune a tree when it's got leaves on it. And there's a reason, because when you're pruning a tree in winter, you really don't know what you're looking at. You don't know what's dead, what branches are dead, what's diseased. I mean, you're looking at something that doesn't have any leaves on it. So you have no clue really what's going on with the tree. I like to prune them, like I said, with leaves on them. The 5 Ds, I teach dead, dying, deformed, damaged, and diseased. Remove those first. And then you get the 5 Cs, which are cankers, conks, cracks, cavities, and crotches. And then after that, we start removing any crossover branches or branches rubbing against each other. And a branch that is removed should be cut back to its origin or to a side branch at least half its size. My guys get really mad at me because when we go to prune trees, they say it takes me 30 to 45 minutes per tree. Yes, it's going to take you that long. Don't just go in there and start whacking it. There's a science to this. I'll actually look at the tree and I'll walk around the tree 3 or 4 times. I'll look at the canopy from a distance and I'll stand there like this. And my guys are like, are we going to prune the tree? Or are we going to stand there and look at it? I'm actually looking at it for form. I'm actually looking to see what's dead in it. And if you back away from that tree just a little bit, you can actually see a lot more and get your perspective in on how that tree is supposed to look and how you want it to look versus, whatever landscape you've got it in. I'm looking at mine because a lot of times nobody's ever pruned it before. And this is its first time. And I'm thinking, man, what a mess. So when I finally get a hold of it, I've got to be extra careful with what I do with it because I can only take off so much of that tree at a time. And maybe you're not going to get it all pruned at one time. A lot of times I don't. I just take selective branches and then I'll like, okay, that's enough. I'm not going to prune it back very severely. I'll come back in another 6 months. I'll reevaluate that tree. I'll see if the pruning did it any good. Is it starting to get a little more healthy now that I pruned it to, a better shape? Is it actually growing? How much has it grown? How many segments have grown since I pruned it the last time? I hate to take off more than what is actually needed. A lot of times I'll just prune the very bases of it and maybe the bottom limbs, and I'll kind of leave the rest of the tree alone for a little while. But I keep coming back every 6 months and reevaluating the tree. I've got spreadsheets from years where I've pruned trees for all downtown, and I can go back and look and keep a record of when you prune your tree. So you can say, okay, well, I pruned this tree 3 months ago. This is what I took off of it. So much percentage, took off some dying limbs. I pruned it back to this shape. I raised the canopy up on it so it wouldn't smack me in the head with a lawnmower. Records are good things to have when you're actually pruning something. And I have had to go back and look, why is this tree dying? Is it something we did? Look back at the record. I'm like, no, we didn't do anything wrong with this tree. Yes, we put the fertilizer on this time. Yes, we pulled off the stakes that were holding it in. We did spray it with something because we had a disease problem or a pest problem, but it wasn't anything that we did that made this tree die. And then, if that tree actually dies, I've gone in, I've dug it up, I've looked at it, and it's never anything I've done. It was a root problem to start with. Those are trees that I haven't planted. Anything I've planted, I've never had a problem with. But depends on who's planted it and how it got set up for failure. When you're talking about proper pruning techniques, you want the correct location when the cut is just outside the soil area known as the branch collar. Everybody has seen a branch that's actually come off a tree. Never, ever, ever do this and leave a great big stub sticking out. And the reason is you're going to get insects or decay that will actually occur on the ends of these stubs. You're just setting your tree up for failure. Anytime you leave something like that, it opens a pathway to decay. I've come behind people that have pruned before me and looked at it, and all I could do was this, and look and go, oh my gosh, I've got to fix this because I don't know anything else to do. And I've spent hours fixing something that somebody else has maimed. Just trying to make sure that plant or tree is actually growing. It's hard to fix something somebody's made a big mess out of. Keep that in mind. But we'll show you how to do it right and do it right the first time. When you prune one, locate the branch collar, determine where to make your cut. And where's your branch collar? It's on the, you can actually visually see more. See that imaginary line right through there? Well, there's the red line. There it is right there. Improper pruning can tear your branches. And I have seen people just leave stubs. They flush cut into the bark. This is how you'll see this. I've got a lot of my trees at the house where somebody did them wrong. And the bark has a hard time, the actual tree itself has a hard time repairing itself. It wants to close the wound, but it can't quite close the wound. It's rolling around, but it doesn't do a good job. What I like to do is a 3-cut method. When I'm actually taking down a branch that is undesired or I don't think it needs to be there, I'll do what's called first an undercut on the targeted branch about 10 to 12 inches away from the trunk. Then I'll do a second cut, a top cut, slightly further out from the undercut, which allows the limb to drop without the weight of the limb causing damage to the tree, which leaves me with a stub. I'm good with a stub at that point. Third cut's outside the branch column, and it should be a really smooth cut. If you've got a question, take your hand, hold it up, look at your thumb. All right. Where would you want to cut your thumb off at? If you had to cut your thumb off. Right there, right? Reason? See that little line right through there? Because I can still use this stub. This stub will grow over, right? But what about a tree? Not gonna happen. So use the thumb method. You've got that little part right before that knuckle that you wanna cut. If you don't, I was teaching a guy how to cut one at a park not long ago. It took him a couple of tries. I had to do a lot of no, stop, don't, but once he got the method, he got it. I mean, he was on fire with it. We pruned that whole park and it looked really, really good. We raised the canopy up. We got some of the branches out of people's eyes and we're trying to walk along the path. I mean, you don't want to be stuck in an eye when you walk along the path. But I told him, I said, just cut the weight of the branch off first. I mean, even if he didn't do this, just cut that weight off that branch that we don't need. Then we went and did the 3 cuts. And if you don't, that bark's going to peel and it's going to peel back into that tree. And it's going to take it a while to actually fix itself and actually put more bark back there. So you don't want to put any type of wounds on your trees whatsoever. Here's another branch collar. This pruning cut should be made just outside the branch collar. Sometimes you'll get codominant stems. The bark may be included in the crotch. It'll actually start sharing bark between the two. It's best to prune one of the stems while the tree is actually young. Don't wait until the tree gets big and go, oh, maybe we need to fix that. Because eventually, I've got one at the house and I've been watching it. They're codominant stems. This tree is this big around. Nobody ever did anything like they were supposed to have pruned it. And I can watch it. It's starting to get cracks and it's starting to slowly separate. And I told my husband, I said, our saving grace is one's going to fall that way and not touch the house. And the other one's going to fall that way and not touch the house. But I mean, it's got a crack since I've been there. It went from this to probably this. So I know eventually, I mean, it's failing. And I know I need to remove the tree, but I'll make the tree. Here we go again. When you remember to prune, you want to make sure you select strong permanent scaffold branches that are spaced 12 to 18 inches apart. You want it to look like a tree. You want a strong central leader through there. You want to go through and you want to make sure that you prune it effectively where it has the shape that you desire. And each tree is different. Don't think you can go prune an oak and then prune your pin oak and you get the same effect. Pin oaks, willow oaks are a little more harder to prune than some of your more native trees. The fact that they're more of, I think, a cultivar. They've been crossbred. I don't like willow oaks. They put your eye out. I'm not a big fan of willow oaks, but they grow fast. I think that's why a lot of people plant them. They're strong. They're good trees. Pin oaks get a lot of gall. If you do plant pin oaks, make sure that or even if you decide to plant trees, get a mix. Don't plant the same tree over and over and over again. Plant different types of trees. Because if you get, say, an ambrosia beetle that loves red buds and you planted your whole yard full of red buds, you're going to be very upset one day when you pass with a lawnmower and you see frass sticking out about that far out of your bark and look at the rest of your red buds and realize that they ate all your red buds and your red buds are dying. So you've lost every single tree in your yard because you decided, I like red buds in the whole yard. Plant different trees, dogwoods, red buds. Think of it as a forested yard is what I think of it as. I've got pecans, I've got bur oaks, I've got white oaks, I've got red oaks. I planted around the peripheral. I just got some nuttall oaks the other day. I've got silver maples, I've got dogwoods, I've got blaze maples. I mean, just a plethora of different types. I've even got some pines back toward the field that actually keep me and the farmer separated. So he knows that's his property and that's mine. But don't plant pines near the house. But be mindful of the type of trees that you have. Plant different types, and you will like it. I do. Proper pruning techniques. The International Society of Arboriculture's arborist certification study guide states topping or heading back is not a recommended pruning method for trees. Crown reduction and drop cross pruning are the terms used by certified arborists. As you go through downtown, it still amazes me to this day, and I've just about wrecked my truck several times. For some reason, one neighbor will do it, and the whole neighborhood, it just like catches on wildfire. The next week, you'll go through the whole neighborhood and have top trees. They don't prune them like they're supposed to for form and take the dead, dying, and diseased out. They just go through because they're scared, I guess, of the height of the trees, and they just start cutting the tops of them out. I think there's a picture over here somewhere. I think down the road there is, but it's an improper technique. It's not something that you want to do. When you're topping, you're cutting the branches back to stubs or lateral branches. You've got new shoots to develop below the topping cut because they're like, this tree is saying, hey, I need to get some more leaves back quick. I've got to make some food. I've got to make some starches and some food for the winter and store it in my roots. You'll get stubs that's left from topping. They'll start decaying, and the shoots are produced below are very weakly attached and become a hazard. When I bought my house, I was left with 20 some odd trees. I was like, oh, those are gorgeous trees. I did not look up into my trees and I did not notice that they had been topped. Every single silver maple that was around the house had been topped. And come winter, when all the leaves fell off and I looked in, I was like, oh my gosh, you can see the knuckles in the top of the trees. They're set up for failure. And that's why I started planting trees on the periphery and outside, because I know at some point it seems like every single storm that we have, I get just loads of branch drops. So I'm always constantly going around picking up branches, and I end up with a big old stack. And of course, we have a fire, and that's how I burn them. But it sets a tree up for failure because they're constantly trying to produce more shoots to actually feed that tree. And I've got a lot of stubs. I've got a lot of dying stubs that are in those trees. They're starting to separate. I've got one tree that's almost completely hollow. I don't even know how it's still standing, but it is. It's amazing. You know, I don't know how they do it, but they continue to want to live, and that's what plants do, even though you're trying to kill them by topping them. Basic pruning cuts, heading. I know a lot of people have hedges in front of their houses. Heading cuts are made just above the nodes. Buds directly below a heading cut generally produce new shoots. If you don't like the look of your, I call it lollipop shrubs, and when you buy them, I had a bunch around my house. What I did is I went through and I actually took them down and went straight through here. Did they come back out? Yeah, they came back out and they look great. Now I made sure I did the right cuts and cut the buds that faced inward. Or excuse me, I made my buds where they cut faced outward, so they all come back, but they don't look so lollipoppy, kind of like the Lorax trees. And they actually look like they're a better health. They look a whole lot better. So you can actually kind of do that to bushes, but not trees. And it is a technique, heading is. You can thin. I had a particular forsythia bush when I moved there. Oh my gosh, it looked like Phyllis Diller's hair, if anybody remembers Phyllis Diller. I didn't know which is what. I mean, I'm up underneath, I'm scooted up underneath this thing, trying to figure out how to cut it. I actually had to cut some of the branches back to get up in it to see how I could actually make it look better. Because I mean, it was all over the place. And my husband said he was going to take an axe and chop it down. That's why I got to save this plant. Because I love the yellow when it actually starts blooming. So you can take a shrub and thin it by cutting about a third of the older branches or canes back to the ground level every few years. New growth increases the density of the plant and the potential for flowering. You can use it for forsythia, spirea, weigela, mahonia, and nandina. I've got one bush, I couldn't even figure it out, and I just went through with a chainsaw and I leveled it. And it was a butterfly bush, matter of fact. And you know, this year it came out, I mean, it's gorgeous. It's about this high now, it's doing great. And I went through and did selective cuts so it'll branch out like it's supposed to. And it does great. Don't recommend it for trees though. But if you don't want to regenerate your bushes or shrubs, you can try some type of pruning like this. And it will generally work. Remember to make sure that don't do it when it's dry and don't do it when it's really cold outside. be mindful of your plant. And you can do severe renewal planting or pruning. That's what I do for those butterfly bushes. I mean, they had gotten huge. When you go past with a mower and it takes you, snatches you off the mower and throws you in the ground, you know it's time to do something to the plant. They become really, really overgrown. And so I decided, look, I need to do something to them. So I cut all the branches off. I did mine in spring though. They suggest you do it in late winter, cut all the branches within several inches of the ground. And because the plant's been there, gosh, I know that plant's probably been there since the house was built. It already had an established root system. The growth is generally stronger and faster than that of a newly planted shrub. Don't do it to a newly planted shrub. I don't recommend it. Something older that's already settled in, it's already got a great root system. That's great, but don't do something that's new that you've already planted. Some people like to have that manicured garden. They really get into it. I don't like it. I like everything looking back crazy in my yard, but everybody's got a different taste. A lot of people do shearing and major commitment to a rigid and time pruning schedule. You'll have to do it, I'd say about every other month or so, especially during the summer. I don't like it because I don't have time, and I work, in the city, and by the time I get home, I don't want to do shearing. So I don't particularly care for it. Start shearing when the plants are young. As the plant grows, shearing will be done 1 or 2 times per year. I have done it 3 or 4. It depends on the growth season. If you got copious amounts of rain, all the right conditions, you may shear it, I'd say about 4 times during the summer, roughly. Needle leaf evergreens such as yew, abovite, hemlock, and spruce are often sheared to develop a more formal look. Like I said, look at what is it? It used to be Larry's. I think Triple S bought it over off of College Street, right before you get to Craft, the landscaping place. He's got all the animals sitting outside. Did you see them? He had some bears and some other type of hedges that he had shaped out. And they're really nice. I mean, if you like something like that, but it's going to require a lot of dedication and a lot of care to actually keep that actual form or look that you're actually trying to get for your yard. When to prune, timing is everything for some plants. Plants in reserves are highest during the dormant period of winter and lowest during spring growth. If plants are pruned during the action weeks of spring, they may grow on diminished reserves to replace parts of lost growth and heal the pruned wounds. Late summer, early fall are also poor times to prune because it may encourage new growth that will not mature sufficiently to withstand winter freeze and may be damaged by the first frost. Please remember, do not prune anything below 20 degrees. I've had people go, I don't know why my bush died. Well, when did you prune it? About a month ago. And this is in the winter. I've had people call me. And it's like, well, how cold was it when you pruned it? Oh, I pruned it during that week when it was so cold. Yeah, you just killed your bush. Yeah, be mindful of the temperature because certain bushes and trees do not like to be pruned at certain temperatures. I don't prune trees when it gets below 32 degrees. Not going to do it. Especially when it's been dry in the wintertime. The cells in the tree aren't engorged enough to be able to handle it, and you're just setting your tree up for failure. Wait, make sure that it's wet enough, that the temperature is correct, and it's the right time of year when you're pruning something.
It seems like it's catch-22, because right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like my boxwoods that are formal, it's like, okay, it's end of season, I need to prune them so that,
Mm-hmm.
so you can't prune them too late because they've got to put on some growth to protect themselves. And August is so dang hot, you're scorching them because you just,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know, I can't find the.
My rule of thumb is when in doubt, start pouring the water to them. Get them good and saturated, keep them good and moist. And then if you want to prune them, but make sure that you continue that for as long as you need to. It's kind of like trees. If you plant a new tree, make sure that it stays nice and moist. That's what I do when I prune my bushes in the front. I need to prune them now. They're about this much too tall. I hadn't had time. I know I need to do it, but I haven't received a lot of rain, and I hate to go out there with a hose and spend $70-some odd a month on water when I know that the rain's coming.
Well, I did learn, you hear all over on YouTube about this wilt stop stuff. So I went out, I said, oh, a bunch of that wilt stop. And I pruned those boxwoods back and I sprayed that on there and I said, waste of my money. And they.
Yeah.
That did work.
I've heard conflicting stuff about it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've never tried it. You tried it?
When I worked for the highway department in Missouri, we used to spray the pine trees and the evergreen trees, but it gets a lot colder up there. It was protected for during the winter season. So
For deer, it's supposed to hold moisture in.
yeah.
Yeah. I think if you just put them on a watering schedule, and make sure that they have enough adequate water, then pruning shouldn't be an issue. Now, I was looking at mine the other day thinking, for some reason, I lost a month. And I'm thinking, I need to really prune those. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is September and it's fixing to be October. And boy, time flies when you're working and having fun, right? And I'm thinking, well, if I prune them now, I wonder when the next first frost is going to be.
You're thinking the same thing I was,
Mhm.
I missed it last year. I said, I don't think I have enough time.
Yeah, I didn't do mine last year either. And if I'd have pruned mine, I'd probably killed it. But I had to stop and think, ooh, if I shear these down right now, and sure enough, we had our early frost. Of course, where I'm at 45 minutes away, I tell you what, I can leave here and it'd be warm. I can go up to Kentucky 45 miles from here. It's a totally different atmosphere. It's cold. So where in Kentucky are you at? Okay, I'm in Crofton.
Okay.
Yeah. And
That's
we're
a nice place.
Yeah, and we're at the base of those cold mountains too. And you can feel that cold out. That air is a whole lot colder at those mountains off of Fruit Hill than it is anywhere else. So makes a big difference. That night you can really feel that cold come down too. It is gorgeous, but it's cold. This time of prunes late winter, early spring when the buds begin to swell and open. Less possibility of freeze damage. Plants have plenty of stored energy. May reduce the amount of flowering or spring flowering shrubs. May be necessary to maintain desired growth. Depends on what if you want the flowering shrubs. I mean, that's up to you. Trees, prune, birch, elm, maple, and yellowwood in late winter is known to be bleeders. I have pruned them, and the water have poured out of them. So I'm very mindful of whatever tree this is. We had some maples over at Dixon Park. They were getting too low, and I guess I missed them one year, and I pruned them, and the water was just coming out of the branches. And I told my help, I'm like, no, stop. I said, we'll just lightly prune them. I said, we're not going to be heavy pruning. They had a lot of sap flow that were coming out of them, and it really stained the bark on them. So we waited and until all the bark, the sap flow was done. Then we kind of went back and kind of pruned them some more because we didn't want that to mess them up. But your trees and shrubs should be examined for pruning on an annual basis. If you've got a whole lot like I do, get you out a spreadsheet. We go through and we check every single one of these once a month. It's okay. Do these need pruning? Do these need pruning? Then you've got a record, and that's a good thing. And then you've got evidence when somebody says you didn't prune something that you did. I found that out. Ensure a proper plant response after pruning. Be aware of the flowering and fruiting habits of the plants. Know what kind of plant you're dealing with. Make sure you know when it's going to flower. Make sure you know when it's going to fruit. General rule, plants that flower before July 1 should be pruned immediately after flowering. Those would be azaleas, forsythias, lilacs, and viburnums. I can't say that word right now for some reason. These plants develop flower buds on the previous season's wood. And pruning in July will actually promote shoot growth and allow time for the flower buds to develop for the next year. Somebody called me the other day. Who was it? Their hydrangea died. And they pruned it the wrong time of year. They cut it back to the ground. Yeah.
I just don't like that.
Yeah. I said, well, it's dead. Plants that bloom after July 1 should be pruned in late winter or early spring before growth starts. And these plants actually develop flower buds in early spring on the current season's growth. Those would be crepe myrtles, rose of Sharon's, butterfly bushes, and some hydrangeas. Don't commit crepe murder. I always say that. Fruiting shrubs, plants that are prized for their fruiting should not be pruned until after the fruit has lost its beauty, regardless of when they flower. Lightly thin branches as an as-needed basis. Pyracantha, holly, barberry, cotton-easter, that one, and Nandenia. Broadleaf and narrow leaf evergreens. It's going to be pruned at any time when the wood is not frozen. These plants are primarily pruned to increase the density of foliage or reduce the size of the plant. If you want to thicken the new growth of the pine spruce, remove 1/2 the length of the candle in the spring, one is about 2 inches long, and that will actually thicken it up. You know, some of them get kind of limmy and kind of thin looking. So if you actually come back with about 1 candle in the spring, they'll actually thicken up. Young trees need to be pruned to maintain a central leader. If you've got a tree that does this, I don't consider that a tree, I consider that a bush. Best management practices, be a good tree steward, prune your trees, be mindful of your neighbors. Don't let your trees hang over and cause a problem for your neighbors along the fence lines or anything else. Carl and I get a lot of calls from people that have not taken care of their trees, or their neighbors have killed their trees by applying glide to the fence line and set the tree up for failure. So, you know, be mindful of what you do to your trees, whether it's pruning or whatever practice that you're trying to, you know, keep the fence line clean or whatever, because a lot of times you're setting your tree up for failure. Be mindful of them. When you do prune, don't remove any more than a third of the living branches. And if you want to develop a strong, straight trunk, start early in the life of the tree to remove the branches. Like I said, I don't do anything for mine for the first 2 years. I let them get established. And then after 2 years, I go back and I start pruning them. And I'm pruning them for aesthetics. I'm pruning them to raise the canopy up. My biggest problem with them is we've got a lot of walking paths throughout the city of Clarksville. We've got a lot of sidewalks. I've got tall people, I've got short people. I've got people in wheelchairs. We have to remain ADA compliant. So we need that width space so they can get down through the sidewalks. And we have to make sure that, you know, people don't get stuck in the eye. When we added bee cycles, the little bee cycles y'all see everywhere that you can rent, well, what does that do? That makes that person a little bit taller riding the bee cycle down the pathway. So the trees had to come up a little more because people were complaining about getting trees in their eyes. There's always something that's going to cause a problem, and it's generally going to be your tree in the way that's causing the problem. I found out, and people are going to call you about it. But it's very prudent that you actually prune the trees so people can actually walk underneath them. Some people will prune trees and they'll throw a fit. Well, you shouldn't prune that tree, and you know we want it to look the way. Well, I'm sorry. It's a city tree. It's in an urban setting. It has to be pruned to not poke people in the eye when they're mowing. It's not the real form of the tree or what it should actually look like in a forest setting. It is an urban tree, and it is the job that we have to do to actually maintain these trees and actually make them aesthetically pleasing for other people to actually look at. When you're talking about a central leader, the main part there is a central leader, very ends of the terminals. The spur is actually the compressed twig. You can do what we call a thinning cut or a heading back cut to actually kind of make some form to that tree. You can actually, here's a improperly pruned stub that's actually sticking out. You've got some root suckers that are coming out. You've got a couple of down suckers. We generally remove all these. And we actually have a heading height. Sometimes you have to go through and have to remove some of those. And here you've got some water spouts. I actually will remove the water spouts. Matter of fact, I had a bunch of water spouts on the ones in Strawberry Alley today. And I just stood there and I'm like, no, can't fool with it. I mean, there was nothing I could do to them. I mean, there were actually sprouts. Some of these trees, I think about 3 of them and all of them down Strawberry Alleys. You could tell they were really stressed out. They're not going to make it. And of course, we've got them slated with this next grant to actually start removing those and putting some new ones in Strawberry Alley. Going to make a lot of people unhappy by removing the big old trees. But they're starting to be invasive because they never were pruned correctly. They're starting to get the canopies on the businesses. The business owners are not very happy about the way they look. They've poked people in the eye, they're dropping branches. I mean, sometimes you gotta go, it is what it is, and you just gotta start from scratch when you're talking about a city tree. They have to be replaced at some time. Proper pruning for proper growth. The tree was planted, and they let it for a couple of years get that big. I've got a couple of police stations on Cunningham Lane that look about like the middle part right here. I like to go through and get a ladder and kind of do a little thinning in the crown. Raise the bottom part up, which I call raising the canopy up just a little bit to let the mowers get around. And then we kick it back and kind of watching that tree for a while and seeing how it's going to react to the pruning that I've done to it. You can space the branches roughly about 6 to 12 inches apart. And by the 5th year, you can have potential major scaffold branches. They should be spaced roughly about 8 inches, preferably 20 to 20 inches vertically. Closely spaced scaffolds result in long, thin branches with poor structural strength. What happens when you have poor structural strength to a tree that you have let go? Either the wind's going to get it, or when you have the first snow and it gets really, really heavy on those branches, and then we have rain, freezing rain. Yeah, I've stood there and looked at my trees when it's been freezing rain. I'm like, what's going to happen? What was the one? It was in 96, I think, that we had the freezing rain. I woke up to what I saw was shotgun blasts in my backyard. I lived off of Blakemore Drive at the time, and I had some huge dogwoods and a couple of pines and some really nice oaks. And it looked like a bomb went off in my backyard. During the night, of course, we got all that freezing rain. The next morning, you hear pop, and you see branches, right? Pop, more branches. It was horrible. I mean, yeah, I was devastated because those dogwoods probably were 50, 60 years old. They built the house, around the dogwoods. I did save a lot of them. I really didn't know what I was doing back then. That's how I got kind of used to in pruning and stuff. So I kind of worked with them, and they're still there, and they still look good. A couple of them didn't make it, but you're kind of playing God once again. It's not necessary to cut back the canopy of the tree when you're transplanting it. Just leave it alone. Give it a little time, and then you can prune it later on. Mature trees pruning should focus on maintaining the tree structure, form, health, and appearance, and always discuss with an arborist or trained professionals the best and most desired method of pruning before the work is done. If you do have a huge tree and you do desire to have the correct work done on it, make sure whatever tree company that you call is either arborist certified or knows what they're doing, or call someone that is arborist certified. And the only person I know is arborist certified in Carson is me and Carla. I don't know anybody else that's arborist certified through ISA. But you can actually look on the ISA website, National Society of Agriculture, and you can look up these people to see if they actually have a license, or a certification for pruning trees. If they don't, or they say they're going to charge you $300 to do it, it's real cheap, don't do it, because these people do not know what they're doing. There's very few tree companies in Clarksville that know how to correctly prune trees. If you're in doubt, get with me and Carla. There are a couple that will say, hey, look, yes, they do know what they're doing. There's a couple that they don't. We'll tell you they don't. So we're not going to tell you a story. Topping is used to reduce the height of trees around homes and utility lines. Topping is not the same as crown reduction or height reduction. And after topping, of course, your tree is disfigured. You've got water sprouts, weak limbs, dense canopies, very little air or light can penetrate because you've got all these little sprouts that are vying for sunlight. They're trying to get that tree up and growing again. And it's probably the worst thing you can do to your tree, and it will drastically shorten the life of your tree. All of my trees in my front yard look like that. And you can see where they were topped and they've got little knuckles. And on top of these knuckles are all these little sprouts sticking out. And it looks hard in the wintertime. I look at them and I just cringe. And I'm thinking there ain't a thing I can do for these trees to make them any better. Because once you top one, it's done. I have had, I had a lady call me one time. She said that her trees were dying and I needed to look at them. I went out to her house. They had moved to Clarksville. Her husband was military. I guess they'd been there 40 years, 50, but they planted the trees, planted them a little close to the house. There was a tree company that stopped by her house one day and talked her into topping her trees and said that they feared that the trees would fall on her house because they were too high. These were sugar maples. Now, sugar maples are a pretty good tree. They're really not going to go anywhere in a storm. They're pretty rooted in the ground. She had a couple of oaks too. They weren't going anywhere. Anyhow, they talked her into topping these trees. A couple of years later, these trees were starting to die. And that's when she called me and says, can you come look at these trees and help me possibly save these trees? I went and looked at it, and I don't play poker because my face doesn't let me. And I know I had a look on my face because she looked at me, she said, they're not going to make it, are they? I mean, she started bawling. This tree company set her up for failure. They were looking for $1. Tree companies will do it. They want a little extra money, so they'll go to you and say, hey, you know, your tree log is going to fall on your house. You know, we can top it, it'll come back out, and we can do it every single year, and you ain't worried about falling on your house. Okay, it looks like a lollipop, number one. It's ugly, number two. Your tree is eventually going to die. Took about 4 years to set her tree up for failure. Her and her husband at that point were on a fixed income. They had no funds whatsoever to remove these huge trees from around her house. All she could do was bawl. I didn't know what, I really didn't know what to do. I told her, I said, well, maybe you can contact somebody or go through your church to have them removed or whatever. Her husband had an illness, and it required pretty much all of their income to maintain his illness. I feel horrible, but a tree company did that to them. So be mindful whatever tree companies you actually pick. Get with me and Carla, and you know, if you want them pruned correctly, we can recommend some people for you. And don't, like I said, don't let them top your tree. Crown reduction and crown raising. Sometimes you'll see the electric department, CDE, is Tree City Utility Certified. So they are supposed to correctly prune back something away from the wires, your tree from the wires, and do it right. They're not supposed to go through and just cut them down. CMC, on the other hand, is not utility certified, and they do not have that certification. And they will just come through and just and leave it the way it is. It looks ugly, it's horrible. It sets your tree up for failure. A lot of times they'll transfer the weight to get away from the lines towards your house, and that tree will end up falling towards your house. Yeah, I don't like it. I don't recommend what they do. If you're going to print it, do it right, or just leave it alone and find somebody else to do it for you. CMC, I wish I could get them on the bandwagon. They do a wonderful job.
And if you would CMC sprays.
Yes, they sprayed at my house. They took out my neighbor's whole driveway, just sprayed it because the lines.
And nothing grows. I mean, I've got some they did in my yard,
Mm-hmm.
and not even grass. Nothing has grown on that on those
Oh,
sites
no.
for 6 months.
I'm wondering if they're mixing it with something.
I don't know what they're using.
Everything's brown down my driveway and my neighbor's driveway. And they seen one little new tree that I had growing out here, and I need a big tree out back. And because I have a daycare and I'm trying to get a little more shade over on that side. And they took out that tree with spray.
And that spray lasts for a long while too. I've noticed
It's dead.
everything shrivels up, dies. I mean, it's dead. It's graveyard dead. There's nothing you can do about it. There's not any water you can put on it to actually, you know, dilute it and make it come back. And once it's done, it's done. I don't know what they're using. I don't know anybody on the CD or CEMC that could let you know, but it's horrible.
And that's what people do spray it. They don't speak in English.
I noticed that too. Like I said, when you're selecting an arborist, look for membership in professional organizations such as International Society of Arboriculture and the National Arborist Association. Remember, membership does not guarantee quality. Sometimes people will get the certification and they will not correctly use it. They will just do still what they want to, just to be able to have that certification, I found out. Just remember, it doesn't guarantee quality, but does indicate a commitment to the profession. my theory is if you're gonna get certification, you need to do the right thing and do the profession correctly. I try to make sure that I do what I'm supposed to do, being an ISA certified arborist. Yeah, I may not prune the tree the way that they want me to prune it downtown because I don't want it to look horrible. But I do prune it to ISA specifications. And when I walk away from that tree, I know I've done that tree right. That's just the way it is. Best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. Like I said, if you're planting trees, go back and look at them. You know, if they're still here and nobody's dug them up or cut them down, I mean, all mine are there. I surprised myself with how many I planted. I'm still planting them. If anybody needs to get a hold of me, look at a tree. There's my email address. I have been moved out from underneath Parks and Recreation. They moved into building facility and maintenance. I do have a new number, the 553-2444. We have a secretary there. She answers the phone for us. I love it. We got a secretary. We've never had one before. And she routes all my stuff to me through email. So if you get her, she'll send me an email or she'll take a note for me or whatever. But she's great. She does us a great service. But if anybody wants me to look at a tree or needs some best method practices, holler at me, let me know. I've got some different pruning tools that I brought that I love. I've got these wonderful Corona pruners. They'll do about 1.5 inches. I think they're great. You can always resharpen these. I like the folded saw. And the reason I like the folding saw is because I'm not very graceful. And I can actually close it back when I'm done. Be mindful that when you close it, or the fingers caught it, I actually flipped it back one day, caught my pinky. And I'm standing there, the safety guy doing this, and I'm not be careful. You get several different types of pruning shears. I like to run them because I can actually replace anything on these. You can just go through the catalogs when you come here, and they got a website also. And you can get all the replacements on these. And these sharpen up beautifully. I really like these. I recently purchased a battery powered chainsaw because when I do my demos, I've used the smaller saw. I generally use a 170. And I've used some of the big saws. Sometimes they don't start like they're supposed to. And then you're sitting there and people are going. So, you know, I like to be able to get the class going. And show them how different ways of pruning. And if I can't get my chainsaw started, then I can't show them exactly how to do it. So, and this thing here, I love it. That was about $267. I got it at the co-op. It does about 100 cuts per charge, and it'll cut some big stuff. It's got a 12-inch chain guard on it, and it does a great job. And I can just grab it, cut, grab it, and cut. And like I said, it does a really good job. But those are my favorite printing tools. If you got any questions, like I said, feel free to email me or call me. I don't mind. And thank you for letting me teach you a class.
All right, thank you, Katie. Okay, I checked the chat box and there weren't any questions in there. I was trying to keep it up, keep up with answering them while you were teaching. So, okay, so I will send out the copy of this recording and we'll plan to see everybody next week. Thank you all.